Hello everyone, I never thought I'd be writing this, but I can't keep it inside anymore. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how my own husband offered me to his Japanese client and how I let it happen. It started as the deepest shame of my marriage, but it became something I still crave in the dark. I'm a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom with 2 young kids, living in a quiet suburban house outside Seattle. My husband Mark and I have been married for 12 years. On paper we looked perfect. But inside I felt invisible. Mark was always working late, the kids needed everything, and my body hadn't been touched with real desire in years. I was lonely, tired, and starving for attention. Nights blurred into one another, folding tiny clothes, wiping sticky hands, waiting for headlights that came later and later. I'd catch my reflection in the hallway mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Eyes tired, curves softened by motherhood, yet still hungry for something more. Mark would kiss my cheek absently, already scrolling his phone, and I'd smile like it was enough. But it wasn't. The ache settled deep, quiet, patient, waiting for the smallest spark to set it loose. Everything changed the night Mark brought home Mr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a high-value Japanese client visiting from Tokyo. When Mark introduced us in our living room, Tanaka's calm, intense gaze lingered on me just a second too long. That single look sent a forbidden spark through me I hadn't felt in a decade. The air felt heavier the moment he stepped inside. Rain from the evening drizzle clung to his coat, mixing with a subtle trace of sandalwood that drifted toward me as he bowed slightly in greeting. His voice was low, measured, each syllable wrapping around my name like warm silk. Emily. I felt it low in my stomach, a pull like Aldent name. Mark laughed too loudly, clapping Tanaka on the shoulder, oblivious to the way the room had narrowed to just the space between us. I busied myself with drinks, hands trembling slightly as I poured. When I handed Tanaka the glass, our fingers didn't quite touch, yet the heat from his skin reached me anyway. He thanked me with the faintest smile, eyes never leaving mine long enough for comfort. My pulse quickened. I told myself it was nothing, just politeness from a cultured man far from home. But my body remembered what desire felt like, and it was waking up against my will. Mark kept talking business, gesturing wildly, while Tanaka listened with that quiet intensity. Every time his gaze drifted back to me, seated across the room with legs crossed tightly, something electric hummed under my skin. I shifted in my chair, suddenly aware of the thin fabric of my blouse, the way it clung after a long day. Why was I noticing? Why did the scent of him make the lonely years feel heavier? Later, as I cleared glasses, Tanaka stood to help when necessary. Yet he moved close enough that his sleeve brushed my arm. The contact was brief, accidental, but it left a trail of warmth that lingered. I excused myself to the kitchen, heart hammering, pressing cool hands to my flushed cheeks. This shouldn't be happening. I was a wife, a mother safe in my ordinary life. Yet that one lingering look from a stranger had cracked something open inside me, letting in a hunger I thought had faded forever. Mark called from the living room, voice casual, asking me to show Tanaka to the guest room. I walked ahead down the hall, aware of his footsteps behind me, steady and unhurried. The house felt smaller, the air thicker. At the door I turned to say goodnight, and there it was again, his eyes on me. Calm, patient, pulling like gravity. I whispered a quick sleep well, and fled to my own room, closing the door to fast. Leaning against it, I tried to steady my breath. But the spark had already taken root, warm and dangerous, whispering what if in the dark. The days that followed blurred into a strange new rhythm under our roof. Tanaka stayed in the guest room while the final details of the deal were ironed out, and the house felt. Every morning I'd slip down the hallway to start breakfast and catch the faint trace of his sandalwood cologne lingering in the air, warm and foreign, like a secret that had slipped out overnight. It made my steps slow, my breath catch just a little. He was always polite, almost too polished, with those sharp features that caught the light and a quiet confidence that filled any room he entered. Nothing like Mark's hurried chaos. I hated how my eyes kept drifting to the way his tailored shirt sat against his chest when he reached for something on the counter, the subtle shift of fabric that hinted at strength held in check. When he said my name, Emily, in that deep, even voice, it seemed to settle low inside me, vibrating through places I'd forgotten could still feel. I started noticing everything. The way he moved without rushing, the small nod of thanks when I refilled his coffee. My body, neglected for so long by late nights and empty routines, began to ache in ways that shamed me. I was a wife, a mother, yet here I was stealing glances like a girl with a crush she couldn't admit. Tanaka was everything Mark was right then. Attentive in the smallest ways, cultured, speaking softly about Tokyo evenings or old poems that made the air feel heavier. He listened when I mentioned the garden had been neglecting, asked questions that made me feel seen, truly seen, not just as the one who kept the house running. In the quiet moments my mind wandered, replaying the brief brush of his strong hand against mine when we passed the coffee pot that first full morning. Just fingers grazing for half a second, yet my skin burned afterward, warm and alive in a way that left me pressing my thighs together under the table. I craved being looked at like a woman again, not the tired partner who handled school runs and dinner. The hunger sat there, patient and terrifying, whispering that maybe I still had something worth wanting. One evening the three of us shared sake after dinner, the bottle Mark had insisted on opening to build rapport. The alcohol loosened everything. Mark drank quickly, his laugh growing louder, his words slurring as he leaned back in his chair. He said with a sloppy grin, eyes glassy, "A beautiful wife like mine. She's the best way to close any deal." He waved a hand toward me, half joking, half not. Tanaka only smiled, calm and unreadable, lifting his cup in a slow toast. The words hung there, heavy and wrong, yet they sent an unwelcome flutter through my chest. Later, after it helped Mark stumble to bed, I passed the guest room on my way to check the locks. The door sat cracked open just an inch, soft light spilling out. I shouldn't have looked. Tanaka stood there shirtless in the dim glow, back partially turned, the lines of his toned body traced by shadow and lamplight. Muscle shifted smoothly as he reached for something on the dresser, water from a recent shower still glistening faintly on his skin. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze in the hallway, breath locked in my throat, unable to pull my eyes away even as shame flooded hot across my face. He hadn't seen me. At least, I didn't think so. The sight stirred something deep and restless, a pull like gravity dragging me toward a fall I knew I couldn't afford. I backed away slowly, feet silent on the carpet, pulse thundering in my ears. Back in my own room I pressed my forehead to the cool wall, trying to steady the tremble in my hands. This was dangerous, so dangerously close to something I couldn't name. Yet the image refused to fade, burning behind my closed eyes as the house settled into silence around me. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror the next morning, water still dripping from my face, and hated the flush that refused to leave my cheeks. "This is wrong," I whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. "I'm a married mother. How can I even think about another man touching me?" My reflection stared back, eyes too bright to guilty. But then a quieter voice slipped in, soft as breath against skin. Mark Hast looked at me with hunger in years. Just once, maybe it would seal the contract and keep the house from slipping away. No one would ever know. It would be our secret. The thought made heat pool low in my belly, a slick ache I couldn't ignore no matter how hard I pressed my thighs together. I gripped the sink until my knuckles whitened, torn between disgust at myself and this terrible, starving need that had been sleeping for so long. Those next days the air in the house grew thick, every room humming with something unspoken. Tanaka's hand would rest on the small of my back a fraction longer when we passed each other in the narrow kitchen, the warmth of his palm bleeding through my thin blouse like a promise. I started choosing tighter clothes, the kind that hugged my curves just enough to feel his gaze linger. I told myself it was nothing, just being polite, just making our guest comfortable. Yet each time his eyes found Beeble, my pulse stumbled. One night Mark drank too much again and passed out early on the couch, snoring heavily. I should have gone straight to bed. Instead I found myself on the living room sofa with Tanaka, the lamp casting soft shadows between us, until his fingers traced the edge of my thigh over the fabric of my dress, slow and deliberate. Just the lightest pressure, circling without pushing further. I didn't stop him. I didn't move away. My breath caught, shallow and trembling, while shame and something far hotter warred inside my chest. When he finally pulled his hand back, I was left shaking, skin burning where he had almost crossed the line. Mark began dropping hints more openly after that, casual at first, then sharper. Keeping Tanaka happy could lock in the contract. It she'd say while pouring coffee, eyes avoiding mine. It might save my job, save everything we've built. The practical words whispered like a lifeline in one ear while the moral scream tore through the other. Every small moment with Tanaka now carried weight, heavy as storm clouds. A shared glance over breakfast. The way he helped clear the table, his arm brushing mine. Each touch felt like both betrayal and salvation, pulling me deeper into a current I couldn't fight. The scent of his cologne, something warm and woody, would cling to my clothes the next morning, faint but impossible to ignore. I'd bury my face in the fabric while folding laundry and feel sick with guilt, yet my body responded anyway, a rush of wetness and need that left me dizzy. How could something so wrong feel like the only thing keeping me afloat? I was drowning in the ache of being wanted again, even as I whispered prayers for strength I no longer believed in. Late one afternoon, while Mark was on a call in his study, Tanaka found me in the garden. He stood close, closer than necessary, speaking softly about cherry blossoms in Kyoto and how they reminded him of fleeting beauty. His breath stirred the hair at my temple, warm and steady, and for a heartbeat I leaned in without thinking. The gravity between us was unbearable. Pulling. I caught myself just before our shoulders touched fully, stepping back with a trembling apology that sounded false even to my own ears. Inside, the war raged louder. Stop this, I told myself while staring at the ceiling that night. Body restless under the sheets. You're better than this. Think of your family. But the lonely voice answered back. Cruel and honest, your family is already cracking, and his touch makes you feel alive for the first time in years. Just a little more. Just enough to save us all. The tension coiled tighter with every passing hour, every almost moment leaving me breathless and raw. I didn't know how much longer I could pretend this was still innocent. Or if I even wanted to. The night before Tanaka was supposed to fly back, Mark pulled me into the hallway, his voice low and urgent like a man grasping at the last thread holding his world together. Emily, the deal is almost signed. He wants you tonight. Just this once. For us. His eyes wouldn't quite meet mine, flickering away as if the words burned his tongue too. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick right there on the carpet. This was it. The moment everything tipped over the edge with no way back up. I stood frozen, the weight of our mortgage. His job hanging by a thread, our daughter's future pressing down until I could barely draw air. Hours blurred after that, crying in the bathroom with the faucet running to drown the sobs, pacing the dark kitchen until my feet ached, whispering to myself that I wouldn't, even as the other voice inside grew louder, hungrier. By the time the house fell quiet, my legs carried me down the hall anyway, trembling with every step toward the guest room door. I pushed it open. Tanaka waited, silhouette framed by the soft glow of the bedside lamp, his presence steady and patient like he had known I would come. I let it happen. The air between us felt thick, charged with something heavier than regret. He was gentle yet commanding, his movements measured, never rushing, drawing out every shared breath until my thoughts scattered like leaves in wind. For the first time in years I felt truly desired, seen in a way that made my skin hum with warmth I had forgotten existed. Pleasure wove through the devastating guilt, twisting tighter with each quiet moment, each brush of fabric and heat that left me breathless and undone. In the morning light filtering through the curtains, I lay there staring at the ceiling, body still echoing with the memory of surrender, telling myself over and over it was for the family, for our future, for the man I still loved even as I had betrayed him in the deepest way. But deep down, in the rawest part of me, I knew a secret truth that shamed me more than anything part of me had wanted to admit, craved that gravity pulling me under until resist unsmelted away like frost under flame. How could something so wrong leave me feeling so painfully alive? Mark never asked for details when I slipped back into our bed before dawn. He just held me a little too tightly, murmuring thanks against my hair, his relief mixing with my silent tears. The contract would go through, our life could keep its fragile shape. Yet, as the days settled back into routine, the ache didn't fade. It lingered like sandalwood on my skin, faint but impossible to wash away completely. I caught myself replaying fragments in quiet moments, the way his steady breath had steadied mine, the pull that felt both destructive and freeing. I still loved my husband. I still hated myself for crossing that line. And worst of all, a small, trembling part of me wondered what would have happened if the night had lasted longer, if the almost had finally become something neither of us could pretend away. The shame sits with me now, heavy and sweet all at once, a secret that changes everything even while everything looks the same on the surface. So tell me, do you think I did the right thing for my family? Or am I just a terrible wife who gave in to shameful desire? Would you have said no if your husband offered you like that, standing on the edge with everything you built at stake? Please comment below with your honest thoughts. I read every single one, waiting in the quiet hours for your judgment or your understanding. If you want to hear exactly what happened in that room, the sounds, the feelings, the way Aka made me lose control without ever saying a word, like and subscribe for the full uncensored confession in my next post. Thank you for listening to my secret shame.